What do we got next? Oh, back to this. So that's that. And then this item here, the yo-yo, is it's expensive because you have to hire a company that's got serious liability insurance. We use Branham out of Hollywood, and this is what it is. He stands in a stirrup, he's got his hand through a loop. That's it. He's got no harness, nothing. But it's pretty close to impossible to fall off because he's got his hand through a loop on his wrist. And he would fly stand on the bridge, fly on out here. This thing would go up and down, and the trick was for the operator to get his feet just a few inches above the tallest person reaching up, standing on a chair, or their friends. And there were times when he actually used to have to lift him over people. And that's a really, really great gag, actually. It was really exciting, because then he ended up out on this tiny little 8-foot by 8-foot stage, which is just in front of or sometimes just behind the lighting and audio front of house position. The band played on. I think he played 4 acoustic songs here. There were 2 songs the band didn't even have anything in. This is just, he did actually have follow spots. But you see this light here? There are 8 of these on 4 on the corners, and there's a couple around here. But they are just MR16s, 75 watt. I mean, it doesn't really matter how. The light was important. He needed some underlight, but at that distance, 75 watts is good enough, because the eye is very clever. It also worked on camera. So that's pretty much how the lighting design worked. So this took 6 weeks from concept to completion. It was a bit of a rush. The scenery arrived wet. And so there's that whole thing of the frame. That's mole phase. That's how we lit the audience. One way we lit the audience. But instead of just being little flags across the front truss, it had this certain architectural structure to it. Here's the bridge with little tubes underneath it. Here's that Ferris wheel effect. Here's the Rocky. And here's the audience. And here's the audio guy. Meanwhile, this is actually how it's built. So they built frames, aluminum, in the first clean workshop, and they just got it sized. That's the bridge. They decked it. They put handrails on. Okay, story to this. OSHA requires handrails. It's common sense. It really is. But we never use them. The manufacturer said, "Yeah, we're going to build them." No, we don't need them. Yes, you do. You can take them off. You can choose to put them on or not. So anyway, we got them anyway, and they never got used. So the bridge got finished. Meanwhile, back in the paint shop, the scenery's been painted. It's looking pretty close to Tennessee limestone. My opinion, actually, is a little too busy, but there you go. You can't monitor people with chainsaws all the time, and it took them about 3 or 4 days. Here is the shape of the sides of the bridge, Luan, polystyrene, pink foam. You can see up here, this is actually on a turntable that's got a saw, and it's just concentric rings. That way we didn't use, that was pretty simple. The reason we cut them concentrically, it just saves material. And there they are, all placed on. They'll get glued down. They'll get coated in the hard shell, and that's just that spray on foam. And this is actually the moment it's been sprayed with the primer coat, and you let it dry. And that locks everything down, and it just gets rid of all seams and edges. And then it gets painted by seam painters. This is my daughter, the dog's in charge. There's some of the sections ready to go. And this is just nice and iron rust. It's a good paint job. I was really pleased with that. And you see it comes in sections, manageable components. The dog's just about to christen the work. These are little patch jobs. Again, it'll get painted over. They're just little, it didn't quite cover, and they'll fill it off. And dash back to the rehearsal room. And what do? You light it in such a way you don't see it. This is actually a lucky shot. That was all the strobe lights actually all fired at once, and the camera as well. Video, that's his little logo. This is Red Rocks, sandstone and limestone, high gain floor. This is in daylight. I thought this stood the test of time, actually. Looked rather good. There's the entrance. There's all the trickery under there. Most of the moving lights are up here. These are just a few little bits and pieces back here. They haven't put the screens up because it's outdoors and they're waiting for the wind to die, but there are the vertical trusses just... And they're just 250 watt, really simple little moving heads because all they ever do is dazzle. They're just twinkle lights, and you don't need 1,200 watts of xenon light to dazzle anybody. I mean, you could dazzle someone with a little flashlight because you're looking at radiant light. The eye is really built for reflected light. This is all reflected. So there's the keyboard place, and that's the scenery dolly, and there's the scenery, and that's pretty much how it worked. And that's Keith Urban, using very simple materials in kind of fairly creative ways. And that's all known technology, and a lot of rental equipment, and very little custom. So that didn't cost too much. Well, it depends on too much. You could have bought a small house with it. You could have bought a big house in Kansas with it. It actually totaled about $128,000. And a lot of that was labor. But that was for a man who's going to go and tour 60 arenas, 20,000 seats a night. Ticket prices will average about $55. See, when you start thinking like that, 120,000, that's nothing. All right, they want 50%. Still nothing. Yeah, as I say, a small house in Kansas for the meek and mild like ourselves.
Jonathan, I have a question.
Yes.
It's Eric. Do you prefer getting hired as a complete production designer now, or as a lighting designer, or both? Or do I prefer what? Do you prefer getting hired as a production designer, including lighting, everything scenic, everything, or are you fine with just being a lighting designer, or how do you feel about that? No, actually, I just like to stay home. Production design's a way of describing production design is you're a director of directors. You're taking a lot of people who are very skilled at specialist jobs. You have a programmer. You tell the programmer what you want to see. You can sit with him and dictate to him every single thing, or you can say, this is what I want. The skill in production design is communication, really. So I go to the aluminum welder every morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, because that's the beginning, and he was the furthest away. So I get all the way across town, get out there, see who they do, and just be present. And he could ask me all his questions, but most of the time he provided me with answers, because he's the specialist. He knows more about welding and fabrication. And also the deployment. He has to build things that go into trucks, and sometimes he has to build things that break down and go into airplane bays, and that's a small door. So they know all the tricks. They know this bolt is much better than that hinge, and they know that hinge here would save you a whole bunch of time in deployment. So those are the tour cost aspects that they have already understood. So what do I prefer? Actually, I rather like theater, because it's something I rarely do. It's usually very small and personal, and you can do some amazingly good illusions with hardly anything at all. The touring business, it has to be like the military. It's got to be really, really strongly built. It's got to be durable. It's got to be rapidly deployable, even quicker in putting it away. It's got to be sensible packing. If you don't have anything but a loading dock and roller doors to go through, I'd start making scenery that's 110 inches wide and 53 foot tall, because that is the size of a truck, and I make it 2 inches thick. A good motto for good stage design or good structuring is larger than life, thinner than paper. That space there is how you save. You don't need huge structure, because everything is two-dimensional. The trick is with lighting and shadow, especially shadow. And shadow's free, by the way. That's the other half of lighting. Literally, 50% of good lighting is not lighting, it's the shadow. That is how you create depth. And again, think like a camera, because you've got two really good cameras, stereo cameras. But if you think like a camera and understand the f-stop, the iris, and how you're going to light it, how you're going to trick people into seeing it, well, not trick people, how to manipulate their eye into seeing
depth perception, focus, how you can get the eye to only be in focus on the person or the object you want to. So you like the object you want them to see and look at much more than the distant background. Remember, the eye, the fulvia, a little time, we discussed this in the eye, there's an area called the fulvia. It's got 40% of all the rods and cones in the whole eye, and it's tiny. It's really tiny. And it's the area where you see in focus. It's about the size of my thumbnail. So what's happening is everything's out of focus, except I've looked at the whole picture, and my brain is telling me this is the picture all in focus. But if you actually look at the picture, just look at the middle space, you'll see how quickly it drops off to out of focus, starts about there. But my peripheral vision goes all the way to there. And it's amazing how the brain does this. It's not the eye, it's the brain. Now it's a brain thing. Okay, so the brain's simulating half of the stuff you see. Now, as soon as it's simulated, you've got it. That's how you build an illusion. You just tell the brain to simulate something else, and things disappear. The little string that nobody wanted to see disappears. Magicians use trick line. They're always good on string. And it's the simple components. They don't break. I'd rather have a piece of string than a chain, because chains do break. String is so flexible. That's actually something to do with flight cases. Hampers, scenery hampers. They're a nice big fabric box. It's a cage of metal with a canvas basket and a wooden lid. And on the wooden lid are 2 buckles and a little chain and a couple of dog clips. First thing that breaks, dog clip. What do? You get a bit of trick line, tie line, and you tie it together, and that's how you close that hamper all the time. Why do you bother with the dog clips to start with? Just use the stuff that you're going to end up using. Trick line. The cheapest components are quite often the best. They're also the things that will break first, usually. Simple, no moving parts, but string is all moving parts. So anyway, that's how we designed Keith Urban. That was a big production. My mistake was, what do you want? And I asked 2 people the same question once, and I got 2 different answers, and it took me a lot of design. And in the end, I just resorted to flicking through the internet. Went to images, and I just looked at iron. And that was one of the search words, was iron. And it came with bridges. I went, oh, bridge. And I looked at a load of bridges. So I'm now looking at iron bridges, and there's the bridge. Bingo. As soon as I saw it, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. A bridge to nowhere. Sous les ponts. French for half a bridge. It's in Avignon. A bridge that was built to nowhere. Anyway, that's another story. So let's go on to, let's see, while we're here talking about lighting, okay, performance lighting. What performance lighting is really about is illumination of performance scenery. But there's not much history about lighting. It's very short. But the truth of the matter is, all you're trying to do is indicate where the eye should be and how the eye can see it. You apply light in different ways. But now we're in this day of camera, key light, fill light, quarter light. That's how you light one person. In real terms, I would actually have 2 there, 2 there, and 2 here, because you want to build in a redundancy. One light bulb's bound to fail sooner than later. It's the cheap component. What else can I tell you about lighting? If it looks good, it is good. If it looks beautiful, it's good, very good. If you're not sure about it, start over. Just trust your eyes. They're very discerning. They take up a huge amount of brain power, just those 2 little organs. All right, here's another way about going about design. This is Taylor Swift, I seem to remember. Okay. Different conversation, me. Here is what I want to do for you is a fairy tale, Romeo and Juliet castle, because they'd already told me what they had want via their production manager. In fact, I got sent, and everybody, there were 12 people bidding on this. Well, 12 people had been invited to offer their idea or interpretation of their idea. And it was this dreadful little cartoon, on a napkin most probably, of a Gothic castle, which is kind of a round turret with castellations on the top and ivy. And the person at the top should have been Rapunzel. It was medieval. But she's singing a love story, and it's Romeo and Juliet. So my first thinking was, this is not medieval, this is Italian Renaissance, this is Romeo and Juliet, this is... And I looked at a city in France called Carcassonne, and it's one of the most preserved Renaissance cities. It's walls, it's got these beautiful turrets and conical roofs, and it was just excellent. And this is how I decided. So the trick with Taylor was she was a young girl. I knew a model would work with her because of the whole doll's house thing. And so I presented my whole little pantomime. It took 5 minutes long. I'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. I had little moving items on sticks, and then I revealed things, and it was really like, it really was a Punch and Judy show. And it was totally practiced, and I knew exactly what I was saying. And when I finished, she said, "Oh, my first model, I knew to nail the job right there." She liked it, she saw it, I got a little round of applause, and then they got up and started fiddling, "Can we touch it?" And they started having visual ideas, and things got bigger, and things shifted, and ideas, "Oh, I can come in here." I gave her 4 different entrances. One was secret, and there were 3 staircases. There was a left wing, a right wing, but she came up through the scenery on this elevator, which you'll see later. Anyway, one of the things she wanted was, "Can I have red curtains?" Yes. So I kind of drew up these things. And there was a big apron, a big thrust runway, and the little apron on the front there got much wider, one of the first things. So that was the idea of curtains, and they, "Yep, that's great." So this is the artwork for the curtain. Now, so the curtains that they were thinking were red velour, would have weighed about 2 tons, and cost about $800,000. That's kind of ordinary. This costs $19,000. It's it's 972 inches wide. I think it's about 30 feet tall. So this is all digitally printed on a polyester, which is inherently fireproof. Warning, the ink isn't inherently fireproof. The finer the quality printing you do, the less ink they put on. The heavier the polyester material, the less, this stuff gets flame tested. They actually take a piece of printed material, set fire to it. It's a 1-inch flame for 12 seconds. This is a field test that most fire departments, especially Los Angeles, who are kind of the worst of them all. 1-inch flame, 12 seconds, let flame off, 3 seconds, it must go out. Flame must stop. It can smolder, but it mustn't have a flame. And that's, otherwise it's considered a fuel transmission device, and that's how fire spreads. They have all sorts of technical words for it, but that's what it has to survive. So this is quite a heavyweight polyester. I used a company in Utah at Prince. They have a 29-foot wide plotter. Basically, they make the material, they stitch the material up, and then they'll lay it out on this huge hanger floor, and the plotter comes along on tracks and just sprays. It sprays 15 colors, 3 blacks and 2 whites, and that's the order it does it in. It does color on the first bar, and it's all going at the same time. It's one pass, and it does the color first, then come the blacks, and then come the whites. So the white's always on the top. And that's how they print it. So this was a piece of artwork which was mostly 4 feet wide, under 3 foot tall. And it's got all sorts of details in it. A lot of the detail goes over the audience's head. But this is for client only. I don't care if anybody actually gets, she gets it immediately. This is borrowed from the British Museum in London. The flowers actually weren't, but the Doric columns are pretty standard. And this was a curved position. And here it is actually a dreadful photograph, but it kind of gives it. There were 3 acts. There was Act 1. Then there was Act 2, which is small stage, middle room. This is so country. And then there's this minuet interlude just prior to this curtain, which reefed, it lifted from the bottom. It actually gathered from the bottom to the top. And it shows it. That's pretty dang good. The only problem with fabric is you're down to your carpenter. You see a little bit of puckering there, and it ruins the whole effect of. But you have to live with who you work with. So it's curved, and it surrounded because we did sell all up the side of the building. But that lit pretty well, although it didn't photograph very well. So the model, this is the model. I produced these towers. They're all different diameters. It's all made out of cardboard. The shape, well, actually, this is just made out of cardboard tube with card wrapped around it. The conical thing, that's all printed on a digital printer, cut and score. We never did do these huge portrait screens. Why not? I think it was just overpowering. So here's the riser that's 8 foot diameter, 8 foot tall. There's a cubicle riser here. We didn't do the doors in the middle because I was actually going to do a blast of light, but that went round the side, and that became a secret door right in that corner there, which nobody could see. Staircase, curved staircase, so 1, 2, 3 ways onto stage, plus here, plus there, 5 ways onto the stage. And here's the main entrance. Is this platform's got an elevator in it, 8 foot square. This is exactly off the shelf. This is called Ice Flow. It comes from Transform It. You weren't here when I told you about this. Transformit.com, Transformit.com. I'd mentioned this. There are many other companies that do this. Mostly they're in the trade show business and architectural canopies. You've seen skins pulled out into beautiful shapes. So they're slightly stretchy. Well, there's this company. There's another company called Moores. I look to other disciplines. You see, music business doesn't see this very often because this stuff's kind of obvious, and it had its moment, but it's not terribly rugged for touring, but it's ideal for, it's just stupidly clever. What it is a lot of little tubes, very thin, lightweight tubes that slide together and make a frame. Then the whole material is built like a pillowcase. You slide the material on and then zip it up. And that's it. It becomes taut. It's a really beautiful. They are really beautiful. They're not quite good for the music business touring because they're not very sturdy. But for architectural and static, they're great. And you should have a look at what they got on there because they got some really nice three-dimensional shapes, and they're actually quite affordable. Not quite a house in Kentucky. Okay. So anyway, we went on, showed them models. I had an idea of maybe putting a door in here. This is the scale device. That's Miss Swift. That's actually, she's just over 6 foot plus heels. And I just shuffled it around, and they got to play with it. And they ended up deciding this should be wider. And it was a great tool. And that's pretty much how that's how it's done. Simple camera. This is my very cluttered studio. Pile of stuff, actually. It's all useful. Then I started sort of working on it because it was white. Originally, I wanted to do this with digital tiles and make the whole thing self-illuminating, so self-painting. But they originally thought that was going to be really expensive. Actually, it proved to be no more expensive than using projectors. So just to test it and to show them this is kind of like client relationships. Yeah, we can do anything on these. This is how it'll look, And a lot of it was projection. And then, meanwhile, they've accepted all that. They've gone for the idea of towers. Okay, and then we had ideas of what we're going to do for the tower, and these are just sketches. And then come the more precise drawings. This is actually not CAD. This is all Photoshop and Illustrator. These are textures, and these are colors, and they're tests. And then to show them for their choice, I'd make different scale tones, put them in a tubular form because that helps with the understanding. It's easier to see it like that than like that. That is that. And here's a big one showing the detail of the TS logo in the keystone. Meanwhile, this is up in Maine, and we're having these custom built. The complex thing, the tube is simple. It's just a ring here and a ring here, and the material is stretched. There's a slight hourglassing to it, but very slight. And then the complicated thing was the conical top. And again, these are specialists. I didn't design any of this. They know how it works. So that's just the tip of the top. You can see what it does. It's all dirigible. You can snap all these little spring-loaded buttons. You can snap everything apart, so you can put it into boxes and put it on airplanes. That's the underside, and it's all numbered. And yeah, most of the time these traveled stacked inside each other. But when they did go to Australia or Europe, they took them apart and put them in and reassembled them. And this is actually how I made the roof. This is the model roof, and you just score the whole thing and then rotate it around. And that panel there actually fitted right under that panel there, which gave it, or even there, that's how you pull it into the conical shape. Okay, meanwhile, back in yet another welding shop, they're building stairs. This is the time a good designer, especially a production designer, keeps an eye on what's being made, because every day there's a mistake. Every day they could be heading into an expensive departure from what you really want, or doing things that are unnecessary. Overbuilding is a big mistake. That is an expensive thing. So this is the elevator. It is in the down position. Oh, no, it's not. It's in the up position. And there is the elevator. It's 8 foot square. I'm going to spit through this, because this is pretty straightforward. This is all the structure that holds all of the decks up. The really expensive part of this was all the decking, all the white material. That's some kind of Marley dance floor that's cut and put on. Labor intensive, cost a lot of money. And no little tricks like using the scenery dollars. This is all purpose built. Then we get to this big old iron storage shop. This is called the steel mill, again in Nashville. And here they are putting all the truss together, octagons. God, I've seen that before. There's putting up, assembling, and just getting it ready for the road, as in numbering it, marking it. This is 6 weeks process. This is 1640 millimeter, very low res video wall starting. That's the top. The truss is going to take it up. This is the rear truss behind the video wall, because this is fairly transparent. These lamps, including a lot of strobes, would just fire right through the video wall. More lighting truss, more model. Oh, opening act. We need a backdrop for the opening act. So the opening act was Kelly Pickler. Their idea was horrible. So we took charge of that, said, we're going to give you this as and you don't have to pay for it. So, oh yeah, thank you. And that was the end of that argument. And this is just an Art Deco thing. And this is also digitally printed, except this area here is not, and it would work front and rear projection. Polyester. That's the artwork. And there it is. Two front, that's Gloriana, the opening act. And they had little video things. And it was good, because this whole thing concealed our big red curtain. And, yeah, stuff. Meanwhile, in that same studio, why am I not getting anywhere here? There we go. I'm stuck between frames. Well, what is actually going on here between... We're green screening cheerleaders for a song, and I don't know what's happened to my computer. It's gone into timeout here. And it's just, we're assembling all the visual components. There's this one song where it's about cheerleaders and band members, and it's a high school song. I'm here sitting in the bleachers, It's about unrequited love. It's about girls who don't have boyfriends. It's, come on.
Jonathan, now might be a good time to take a break anyways, because we need to take...
oh no, there it goes. Okay, no, it decided maybe I went too quickly. So, are we still good on camera? 2 minutes, okay. Green screen, we're just basically, they're dancing around in front of the green screen. They will turn up. It's doing it. Yeah, I need to time out here. Okay, so here she is. She's in the cheerleader's uniform, the band uniform. The girls are on the screen. They're also down here projected on the scenery. Actually, pausing in the middle of this is difficult, but it does seem to need to pause.